Hey, what's going on, guys? So, 24 hours removed from the national championship game last night, Bama knocks off Ohio State 52 to 24. I'm just here to talk a little bit about it. So, my prediction for this game, honestly, this is no BS, but I said Bama would win 52 to 27. I don't know if I've ever been that close on a prediction before, but I was pretty close. And the reason I said that is because I looked at a lot of game tape for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm a Bama fan, so I watch all Bama games anyway. But after looking at some of the teams that Ohio State played that were better teams, Northwestern, Indiana, I wouldn't say Clemson because they played truly their perfect game of the season against Clemson. But looking at some of those better teams, I could see that if defenses put pressure on Justin Fields would make mistakes. And that's kind of true for any quarterback, so that's nothing new. But it looked like his athletic ability sometimes gets him in trouble. It's like he relies on that too much. And then instead of making the smart dump off play, he holds onto the ball too long. And then in a last second panic before he's about to go down, he forces something and there's a pick or there's a fumble or there's a big play or a pass deflection or just a bad throw. And I thought that if Alabama could get pressure on Justin Fields in this game, that Bama would pull ahead. And then when I looked at the matchups, I thought Bama's D line could put pressure on Justin Fields. I knew Christian Barmore. I knew what he could do. I knew how much of a force he was on the inside. Now everybody knows how good he is. I also thought that Bama's corners could hold their own against Robert Wilson and Chris Olave. And if you look at the stats, they did pretty good. I think Olave and Wilson, maybe 60 yards apiece, but not really any huge plays this game. And that's all you can expect in today's type of college football. This is not 10 years ago. This is not NFL pro style football where you just play good defense and try to make some plays on offense. And then occasionally you have a team that likes to throw the ball away. Completely different game these days. But Alabama held their own. I think you really got to give it to Pete Golding. He's caught a lot of heat, especially after last year, and I think he was dealt a bad hand. But after the Ole Miss game, it was not looking good for Pete Golding. And all he did was work on fundamentals, and they went from a team that wasn't very good at tackling against Ole Miss to maybe one of the best tackling teams in college football right now. They still give up yards, and that's okay, but they don't give up a lot of yards after the catch. And even Pete Golding mentioned in the Ole Miss game, they gave up 250 yards after the catch. So Bama's defense really held their own. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think Bama's offensive line held their own. Chris Owens, I'm not sure, but I haven't really looked at it, but I don't think Chris Owens, I'm not sure if he played center. I thought they might have moved some people around, but there was not a tremendous amount of pressure on Mac Jones. The one mistake, the fumble that he had, he kind of did a bootleg out to the left, and Billingsley or Joel Billingsley was supposed to come around and pick up a block, and he just missed the block. He got there late. So as soon as Mac Jones turned around, an Ohio State defender was in his face. He tried to tuck the ball away, fumbled, fumble inside the 20-yard line. Ohio State ended up scoring and tying the game up 14-14 at that point. But other than that, Mac Jones really did a good job of moving around in the pocket. He took off, made some runs when he had to, and I thought the offensive line played well. This game, in my opinion, was won on the offensive and defensive line. Alabama didn't dominate, but they won. And what I mean by that is they just kind of leaned on them all game long, and then eventually just kind of warmed down, especially the defensive side of the ball. The other thing, too, is when Alabama got a big enough lead, Ohio State completely abandoned the run. I was hoping they wouldn't do that from a fan perspective, because when you do that, then Bama knows they got you. They pin their ears back, they put pressure on you, and when you ain't got to worry about any type of run game, that's kind of a disaster for any team going against Alabama. But, I mean, it was one just one heck of a performance. And the unfortunate thing is lost in all of this is how great of a season Ohio State had. I mean, they went through a lot. A lot of people said that only playing 7 games, they were fresh. It was kind of an unfair advantage. I disagree. I think it hurt them. They never really were able to establish a rhythm throughout the season. And, I think people thought that after the Clemson game, they had found their stride, but they really hadn't. I think the real Ohio State team was the team that we saw throughout the season, actually. A team that beat teams that they were superior to and struggled against teams that were closer in talent levels, with the exception of the Clemson game, because I just think Ohio State played out of their minds and they went in there with a big chip on their shoulder. Bama was all business. And I think, too, a lot of people after that Clemson game were picking Ohio State to win. I mean, there was a lot of people thinking that Ohio State was going to win this game besides their own fans. And I think maybe Alabama kind of took that personal. And they were so focused. This Alabama team was very focused. And these players came back for one goal, and they weren't going to let anything deter them from that goal. And, I mean, you really got to give it to them. Yeah, and you got to give it to Ohio State, too. I know, and I'm not here to rag on Ohio State because that's a great program. It's one of the best programs in the country, and I have respect for all great programs, even rival programs to Alabama. I love the tradition behind college football, and they will be back in it next year. They will be in the thick of it for the Big Ten. I think they'll win the Big Ten, and they'll probably make a playoff run. That secondary, too, that was a liability that, let's just be real, this Alabama's passing efficiency and passing game this year was maybe the best we've ever seen and will see for a long time. But Ohio State did not have a secondary that could compete with that. That secondary will be better next year. So there are some things to look forward to if you're a Buckeye fan. You just got to brush this one off. You recruit well every single year and get back in next year, and we'll see what happens. You'll have some big games. You'll have your chance to prove yourself, and I do not expect anything less of you guys being one of the top programs next year. Now, on the Alabama side, a lot of things. You're going to lose Steve Sarkisian. If you're a Texas fan right now, you are ecstatic about what you saw. You're feeling really good because you got a lot of talent at Texas, and you saw what Steve Sarkisian can do when he has talent. But Alabama's got to find an offensive coordinator to fill that role, and that's going to be hard shoes to fill. I give it up to Sark, and I'm pulling for Sark because unlike Lane Kiffin, I always kind of looked at Lane Kiffin as a punk. I think he was very controversial at times, and I think he got on Nick Saban's nerves. And to be honest with you, I believe Nick Saban was a little relieved when Lane said he was going to leave and take the Florida Atlantic job. This was before Ole Miss. But not Sark. Sark was a professional. He realized, like Saban said, that he wouldn't even had this opportunity at Texas if it wasn't for the players. So the right thing to do was to finish what he started at Alabama with the offensive team and end the season the right way. And he did that. And I'm pulling for him. And I think in 2022, when we play Texas, we do a home-and-home series with them. I think it's going to be great. But Alabama's got to fill that offensive role. And Alabama's also got to see how Bryce Young takes over for Mac Jones at quarterback. Watching Bryce play this year, I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's got a great arm. He's mobile. He's way more mobile than Mac, but he kind of gets happy feet. I think he lacks confidence right now. But I think that confidence will come, and I think we're going to see a different Bryce Young next year than we saw this year, and I think the spring's really going to help in that development. And I think he's improved even, from the beginning of the year until now. So he'll be fine. And then we know Alabama recruits. We'll see what that team puts out on the field. But I just really wanted to get in here and talk a little bit about the game. If you have any thoughts, let me know if you see this video. And we'll talk to you guys later. All right.